All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to In Tune with Joon number 6. We're doing the second part of the very fun public versus private school episode. I'm joined today by the lovely Monica and Daria. Please introduce yourselves. Just start. Great introduction, Monica. Okay, that's fine. And Daria, would you like to introduce yourself? Yes. And just to recap, for those of you who were not here last time, maybe, um, this episode is a follow up. This is not the first part, it's a follow up on the first part where we talked mainly about elementary, middle, and high school. And today we're going to be talking about sort of the end of high school, choosing between AP, IB, FB, these different ways that you can bolster your college application and get credits to go to college, as well as the transition to college. So, without further ado, I think we should pick up where we left off last time. And I think we should start talking about just quickly what program you did. I did the IB program, and we'll explain what that is later. Monica, what program did you do for high school? Don't worry, I'll explain all about that. Yeah, public schools do it too. Right. Okay, and Daria, what program were you in? Okay, so I was the only one who did IB. If anyone's listening in chat, let us know what program you did. So, I'll just do a quick overview of IB program. I've heard that the AP program is a sprint, the IB program is a marathon. That's a general analogy I can make. It is a program similar to AP. IB can be used to apply to universities in many places throughout the world, whereas AP is more focused in the US. IB credits transfer over to college only if you meet a certain score. And I think that's the same way for AP, but it's a little tougher for IB from what I understand. Um, so overall, IB gives you a lot of flexibility. You're given certain categories, like let's say you have a science category, but if your school offers it, you could take physics, you could take chemistry, you could take biology, you could take maybe zoology, whatever branch you can go into and just take as your classes. You're not forced to take uh, X amount of APs in these subjects. It's got a lot of nuance to it. And then you have your standard levels and your higher levels. You need to have three higher level courses. Obviously, they're more rigorous. You have extra classes that the standard levels don't have, etc. And it's in that way a little different than AP because IB sort of covers your quote unquote normal classes with the standard level options and your higher level options with the higher level courses. So, for example, I took biology, chemistry at higher level, English at a higher level, French at a standard level. I took, wow, I'm blanking, history at a standard level, and there was one more. Did I mention math already? Math at a standard level. Anyway, there are six. There are six classes plus a seventh like theory of knowledge class. Point is, the things that differ IB from AP, from what I understand, is that you have a big essay that is due at the end of your term that you need for the IB diploma called the extended essay. This is an essay on any subject. You choose an advisor from among your high school teachers. I chose history. I did it about the White Revolution in Iran, which was an event occurred in the 1960s. It was supposed to be like some sort of public reform from the king. And I argue that, I asked the question, to what extent did this lead up to the events of the Persian Revolution, the Iranian Revolution? So anyway, so I know, right? So that's one of the differences. Another difference is that you have these huge IB exams at the end, which cover everything you've done in the last 2 years. Are AP exams like that, real quick? Does it cover multiple years, or is it at the end of every year? But are they at the end of every year? Okay, so for the IB program, it's after 2 years. It's at the end of the 2 year program. So it's got 2 years worth of material. Is that different? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So there we go. Small difference there. Um, And finally, there are like these extra bonus requirements, this theory of knowledge class where you have an essay due at the end or a presentation, I think both. And it was both. And you have CAS hours, which is like community action service hours. You would needed to complete 150 hours of sort of community service. I think that's become a requirement for high schools now. I could be wrong, but yeah, but that was a requirement to get your IB diploma. So okay, I've covered the differences that I know between IB and AP. I think those are the big ones. But yeah, feel free to elaborate on the quirks of AP, and once we get the quirks out of the way, we'll start to talk about positives and negatives of the programs. All right. Thanks. Thanks for calling it out. I can hear you guys. Yeah, I have you in my ears. Needs to be nice and proper for the stream, but go on. Hey, it's a little prop. It's like awareness for what, the taboo word. You don't have to take that. Oh, theory of knowledge. Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay. Oh wow. Mm. Can you elaborate? Hold up, guys. None of your audio is coming through. Crap. So I changed my headset, and it looks like the all desktop audio is not coming through at all. Crap. Okay, let me figure that out sooner rather than later. I'm having some technical difficulties. I'll put the starting soon page again. No, I'm kidding. But I do need to figure this out. That's unfortunate. I've been having a conversation with myself the whole time. Um, okay. All right. Well, now they can hear you. Unfortunate.
Should I just take it from the top?
Okay. Well, they've heard a lot of what I've said. Luckily, up until now, I was hogging the mic, so they heard a lot of what I said. But just quickly reintroduce yourselves, Mon, Daria, and then Daria, you can pick up where you left off.
Okay,
Ooh, it was
so
the whole time.
Yeah.
at least I get to redo my introduction.
Yeah. Go for it.
So I'm Monica. I took AP classes at a public high school, and currently I'm in a 4-year public university, Cal State University. So, yeah.
Okay.
I'm Daria, and studied was in a public school for high school, and then I went to France for university, and it was a public institution. Um, Actually, I went to two. Well, I went to technically went to three. So, one private, which is the music school, and then two public ones.
All right. And I mean, everyone heard where I was going off about IB. So we could just pick up on you were saying the busy work of AP.
Well, yeah, so I would say one of the key differences between sorry, in the introduction, I was in all APs except for math in high school. I'm friends with all you guys from Lille, so you guys were taking a lot of people at my old school, which was Kia schools, were taking the international baccalaureate. So we would always compare our programs. And one of the key differences I noticed was that we AP had a lot of AP is a little easier than IB, I'd say, but totally agree with that. Is I would have, and I was asking if Monica's experience was like this, but I had some classes like AP US history, where I had a fantastic teacher, but because she had to shuffle all this information, I can't remember, Monica. You asked me if it was a semester or a year long. I think
Yeah.
A push is a year long, right? And
I mean,
Enviro was a semester long. AP
okay.
environment. I might be,
Um,
yeah, I think that's in my memory. But
yeah, it's been a while.
they both had crazy amounts of paperwork. Like that's
Mhm.
what I remember from those classes. It was just like worksheet of a worksheet, and then you're like, I don't know how much of this is useful. You're like, this is just like, I don't know. It felt like a Wikipedia, not like we're actually doing history. Or
I mean, for my experience with AP, I kind of took the lazy route. I know that a lot of my friends were taking AP everything, and I knew that, for example, I was not great at chem, so why would I go through the, struggling with chem when I can take general chem? And I wasn't interested in bio, so I didn't take bio. I took basically the essentials that I was good at, which was math, and which is why I'm also a math major. And I took English because I knew that I didn't want to take English ever again when I was in college. So I wanted to get my credits out of the way. And I also went for classes that were a year long. So that way I wasn't rushed to finish everything by the end of the semester and then risk going through, like, for example, if you take an AP class in fall and then you have the entire spring semester with a different AP class, I was afraid that I would forget everything that I learned in the fall and fail my AP test. So I was very systematic about how I went with my classes because I wanted to try to get a maximum profit with as little, consequences and as little. I was basically doing damage control with myself and also making sure that I was enjoying myself, so I wasn't stressed out the whole time. Um, so I didn't take a lot of AP classes, but with the ones I did take, I definitely know that it was um, a lot of heavy work. But luckily, a lot of my teachers, they try to balance that by giving us practice worksheets. So that way, when we were working on stuff, it wasn't just random worksheets. It was actually stuff that we would expect to see on the AP tests. So that way, they were training us from the very get go to understand what kind of questions to expect, how to answer these questions, how to work out these questions, and if you didn't know how to work out the questions, showing what kind of work to get some points on it. So it was a lot of work, but I would say that the work that I was doing was it was very useful.
No, I mean the work we were doing was very useful. It's just that like for the test, right? But you know what? I guess I kind of went into it expecting a kind of more IB approach. Maybe that was my fault. And I went into it, and they're like, the AP has a very different testing system. It's less focused on your arguments. Like I think IB is
Oh,
very
I have a lot to say about that.
really
Well,
well. I'm Kia. My impression is that IB is at least compared to the AP, and this is just an impression that IB at least is more like you have that big essay to turn in, you take your choice. IB has a more universalist approach and more like how can you argue your finer points in any
100%.
subject.
It's not
Whereas
about what you know,
we
it's
did
about
just
how
like
you can argue what you know.
so AP, I don't think so. I mean,
Not
fair
at
enough.
all.
We had
And
we
I
had every chance.
100% I'm going to talk about this about my difficulty getting used to the testing system at UCI.
Well,
well, I mean,
every test
oh,
for
I'm
us,
sorry.
we had a sorry, Mike, I'll let you go in just in a
No,
second.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
Right.
that was my
Because
bad.
I just wanted to follow what I was saying was I haven't forgotten that we did have free response question sections and we did have an essay section, but they were pretty pitiful compared to the multiple choice section. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess with me, I didn't have any experiences with IB classes, so I didn't have any set expectations. I was just kind of taking whatever everyone else was taking. So, I mean, as far as, the whole how to think thing, I didn't really have any expectations for that. I was kind of just doing whatever I knew. And when you were mentioning the free response questions, I think that was kind of like the closest thing that we got to thinking freely. But I mean, I don't know how that applies to math because I don't know how I'm supposed to prove a point with math. But
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
I think,
proofs.
well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't even proofs on that. It was just kind of like working out things by hand because I
Yeah, of
know that the
course.
multiple choice was kind of going on. So there wasn't much room for words on that. But yeah, I think with the AP classes, I think that it's kind of unfortunate. I mean, now that I'm hearing and learning that IB classes are set in a way where it does involve a lot more philosophy, I guess that's like a double-edged short sword.
No,
Would
not a
you
lot
would you
more,
say?
but like there was a little bit of it in it, and then I guess yeah, no, I don't want to paint a picture as in like IB is like this Athens where everybody sits around. No.
No, no, no.
But I do have to say it's a little bit controversial. I think that these AP tests and IB tests are just really expensive ego boosts. And
Ooh,
I still firmly
ooh,
believe that. I mean,
good
even
point.
as I mean, I was taking obviously I'm a math major, so I'm, competent in math and higher level math. But when I was in high school, I was taking AP Calc, and I was getting straight A's on every exam, every practice test I've done, and surprisingly, I did not pass my AP
What?
test. I did not
No
pass my
way.
AP test at all. I got a 2, and I was very
Wow.
shocked because I felt that
That's fake.
yeah, I mean, I've done all the preparations and the necessary work. So
Yeah, yeah, sure.
it was a letdown. I mean, I felt like I was really cool, like, oh, I'm taking AP this and this and this, but I had nothing to show for it later on. And I realized that my entire work and what I paid for came down to this test. And what I didn't like was that this one test really defined my pace in college because I had a repeat calc. And whether I was,
No
trying
way.
to say I could, yeah, I was trying to make a
Even
point
got an A in
where,
the class
I'm sorry?
about this, like, because I thought they would make an exception if you have like an A in the class, because the class is a
Yeah,
lot more work
so
than the test. So
yeah, that's what I was trying to do. I mean, I argued my ass off when I went, But I took a lot of college readiness tests to make sure that I could survive in their math department, and I scored 90th percentile. So basically, everything I did right did not help me at all because I was defined by this one bad AP test day. And I had to end up repeating it. And, it did slow down my college career a little bit. And so for me, I kind of have a negative feelings about AP because you put on all that time and work and money. And in the end, it's kind of like a make it or break it for you.
So annoying. Oh my God.
Okay. Well, I wanted to point out that maybe your experience on the test also influences the bias you have against AP and IB. But I do agree, that aside, that this is more in a larger dialogue about how our education system often doesn't make sense. Is that you're constantly needing to have some sort of standard score to move on to the quote unquote next echelon of learning. We argue that in the last episode, I think Daria brought this up, that college is the new high school. You need a college degree in order to get a job in our society, unless you pursue a trade, right?
Mhm.
And the fact that you need to prove yourself to get into college. Imagine a middle schooler needing to prove themselves to get into high school. Can you conceive that?
Yeah, it exists. I tutor someone like that.
It exists? What do you mean it exists?
Yeah, it exists, man. Totally.
What?
There are certain, actually, we can do a little go back, but yeah, Monica, I mean, um, as I'm sure she could tell you more too. It's like there are, for private high schools, right? You do have to test into them. That's
Okay,
just
for
one,
private high
right?
schools.
Well, no,
But
actually, for me, when I
for
was
only
debating taking, not even for AP, like if you wanted to go into the honors classes,
I had
you
to
would
take a
have to,
test. Yeah,
yeah, you would have to stay after school and take a test to see if they would admit you. And then after
I
you
did in the
take that
summer.
course,
Okay, but
yeah,
that's for
yeah,
an
it was in the
honors
summer.
course. I'm talking about getting to the high school period.
There are high schools. No, there
Yeah,
are high
you have,
schools that are not necessarily private. That are kind of like those in betweens that they test for incoming students, right? Because they want to boost their ratings and stuff. It exists, few, but it exists.
Okay, but when we talk about that transition from middle to high school, it's usually seamless. You're not worried,
It is.
am I going
Yes.
to, is any middle schooler asking, am I going to get into high school?
Yeah.
No.
No. No. No.
Okay,
No. You're not.
well,
You will go in.
there's just a whole stressful period in 12th grade when you're asking the question, am I going to get into college?
True.
And if we're talking about ego boosts, there's no bigger ego boost than saying I got into so and so university when other people didn't, right? That's the
Right.
ego boost here, for sure. Anyway, my overall point is that if we're going to allow people to make college the new high school, which we have, that's how our society runs now. You need a college degree. We need to expand upon those colleges that are no brainer. I'm going to get in. We have community colleges. I know they exist, but we need a little more than that because there are obvious shortcomings when you compare a community college to a state school. You cannot get a 4-year degree from a community college. So somebody should be able to complete a 4-year degree without so much as completing high school. You shouldn't have to worry about even AP classes, IB classes, in my opinion. This is not to say that those shouldn't exist and that they don't have a role. Let's say that I think the one great example is transitioning the Cal States to a more, uh, like I don't, again, I don't know the logistics of this. I don't know how you'd even do this. Maybe you'd need to build more schools, but there should be a seamless transition from high school to college. That's my overall point. And you can leave your Ivy Leagues and whatever, and you can take your AP and IB classes if you want to get into those. But if you're not planning to go to those Ivy schools, just, you should be able to get a high school degree, take your standard classes, and go to a Cal State or a state school and just move on with your life.
well, I mean, I disagree with that because I go to Cal State school.
You disagree
Well,
because you go to a Cal
community
State school?
college.
What do you
Well,
disagree with exactly?
so I disagree because I think that because I did apply to UCs, I was thinking about applying to them, and you guys for your applications, you guys have a lot more extensive work to do as far as personal, like letters of recommendation and
Yeah.
like a letter of that self letter thing. I didn't have to do that. So I would argue that Cal States are technically kind of already somewhat seamless because all I had to worry about was submitting my ACT scores and my
Well, there
transcripts.
you go. You had to
And
take the ACT.
but you have to take that for any college that you go
Right,
to.
and I'm saying it shouldn't be like that. There
That
shouldn't be a rite of
everybody
passage
should
to
be.
college. That's my argument.
I agree with that, but I feel like community college is
I
what
think
you're
yeah,
talking about.
I think that's what kind of community college is left for because I feel like when you say that Cal State should be turned into sort of a seamless transition, that kind of makes me feel like it undermines all the work that I put into. And, I would argue that I did take the ACT score. I scored into, getting into Cal State schools. And, when there is an option to go to community college and then transfer into a state school, I believe that when you're saying, oh, just like let everybody go to a Cal State, and then if you want to take APs, just go to a higher, an Ivy League or a private school or something like that, kind of undermines the work that was put into getting
No,
accepted
I
into
don't
a
think
Cal State.
I didn't understand it that way, Monica. I think you and I gotta be honest. I think that was a apocalyptic take on what he was saying.
Oh, okay. Well, that's how I took it.
I didn't understand it as a comparison between like if one's doing
No,
harder work or
it's
another.
not.
I think Kia wants a cushion so that everybody has access to higher education because a lot of people that don't want to take APs, that don't want to take honors, their access is barred, right, Kia?
Exactly. I was going to touch on that. That it's a privilege to take it, and even though there are programs that have
You were saying,
waivers, sorry,
Monica was saying it is a privilege to take it because it costs money.
it's true. And
Money.
even if there are waivers for low income students, you have to think about the infrastructure that led them to there. Are they ready to take an AP class, for example? So there are a lot of systemic problems there, but we're not
Well,
even
are
necessarily
you
getting to
talking
that.
about the ACT or are you talking about AP classes?
Well, I'm talking about both.
All,
Because I'm
yeah.
saying that you don't necessarily have to take any AP classes if you want to go into college or at a
But what are
Cal
your
State.
but what are your chances? You know what I mean? Like realistically, like it's idealistic. I feel to say that kind of stuff
I mean,
because when I was
I've had a lot of friends who took a lot of general classes and they got into Cal State Fullerton, Cal State Long Beach as well.
no ACT, no SAT, nothing.
Well, they had to take the ACT, but they didn't take any AP
Well, that's my
classes.
point.
No,
That
that's
there's a
also
rite
part of
of passage.
yeah. Like what if you're just like Monica? I'm myself. I'm a very bad test taker. I'm terrible. I'm fucking awful. I'm still to this day. I'm awful. I've never
Mhm.
solved that problem. Um, I've gotten better, but like it's unfortunate that it's just an example of what Kia is saying. I guess that it's just unfortunate that we like have to have has to be part of the system, right? I mean, I kind of though I suck at test taking. Maybe it's a good topic. I kind of agree with it though, against myself because I feel like putting individuals in high pressure situations like that does test a certain aptitude that could
Yeah, so
determine
I don't think
that's
it's
important in life, you know,
so.
because we're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that yes, it is kind of a rite of passage to take these tests, but I would also argue that I don't know about UCs or private schools, but when I was taking these standardized tests to get into college, you have the SAT and you have the ACT. For Cal States, we didn't have to take the SAT, and I was relieved because my school offered a lot of pre-tests. There was like this one test where it shows you whether you're better off taking the ACT or SAT, and I was a lot better with the ACT. So I decided to take that. So I wasn't forced to take the SAT at all.
Oh,
But
alternatives. I see.
yeah, so I mean, I don't know about UCs, but definitely for CSUs, they take ACT or SAT. So that did give me a little bit comfort knowing that, okay, I wasn't stuck with taking a really crappy SAT score and like getting a crappy score and, hindering my chances of getting into a good college. But I do agree that the tests that I see in college for my, math classes, my philosophy classes, my history classes, blah, 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 it does mirror a lot of the stuff that was on the standardized test for the ACT. I didn't take the SAT, so I wouldn't know what was on there, but I do think that it prepares you of what to expect when you're in college. So I don't necessarily see it as totally a rite of passage. I think it's more of, are you ready? Are you going to be able to manage these kind of classes?
I think
Yeah,
bringing up
I would.
alternatives is a good thing. Having an alternative testing where let's say it's not paid. Let's say it's a lot more accessible. Let's say that the requirements are a lot lower. They're just testing for like English comprehension competency to see, okay, well, are you going to actually learn anything in college? That would be useful. You're right. It's making sure that there's a par and you're meeting
Yeah, but
it.
watch, watch them make that into the same caste
Oh,
system
a
that
hundred
exists right
percent. If
now. You
if
know?
if they were to pursue
Always,
something like that, that would happen 100%.
man.
But we're
Just
talking
choose, man.
idealistically. We're talking about reform potentially. And if we're
Yeah,
going to reform something, why have like a band-aid solution, like an alternative test? At the end of the day, let's look at our current system. Everyone keeps saying, "Oh, community college is there." Look, when you enter community college, first of all, there's a stigma with community college. Let's get that out of the way. Whether that's right or not is not up to us. It's a fact. Number two, we have lack of research opportunities in community colleges. That's a huge part of a lot of people's undergraduate experience, especially if they're going into STEM, if they're going into social sciences, any sort of field that you want to, pursue academia. Now you're already shoving them into well, you should be taking APs and IBs and et cetera. And that's a huge chunk of people. And third is that, community college suffers from like the whole infrastructure problem that there are too many students, that there aren't enough spaces in classes, and
right.
that whole caste system that Daria was talking about. Well, now community colleges are becoming competitive to get in classes. You have professors charging hundreds of dollars for their own books. I'm sort of leaning towards, why don't we just make education much more accessible to begin with, instead of putting a band-aid on a problem that has been created. That's my overall goal here.
Yeah, Kia, I want to kind of take that into a larger scope, all of that, because on top of those problems, just affording, you also the getting into. We didn't really touch upon this, but I remember how shocking going from the French school to the public school, and everybody since like ninth grade is geared to getting to college. All those AP, all those honors kids, and then later on those AP kids, they were just like from ninth grade, they were like 5.0 GPA, weighted 5.0 GPA, like straight through, and they would torture themselves, And I thought it was hilarious. I'm mean. We get to 12th grade and they put all this work, they put all this effort, they have the five, very, they're hard workers and they're smart kids, right?
Yeah.
But they get to 12th grade, they apply, they get into like they get into a bunch of schools, but they don't get into any of the reach schools. They don't get
Right.
into any, and they're just bummed out. They're like, "What the hell did I just spend my whole, you know?"
Well, it happened to me, so
And
yeah, I can relate.
and oh well, but I guess those kids though, they were hit with the hard reality that, because there were other kids who did not have that same GPA, right? But they had legacy, for example, and
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
and I don't like being fed that BS that legacy doesn't really count. Oh, it counts. Oh, it fucking counts, all right. They
Well,
look
let's
at
just
you.
say, let's not point at one thing. Let's say there are obviously other things than your metrics that influence whether you're going to get into a school or not.
That's what I'm getting at. But one of the most scandalous would be legacy. Another one that's really um, scandalous is that. Well, I guess this one is kind of, there's a quota for
Oh,
for
100%.
um,
I think
for
that's
ethnicity,
garbage. We got to get rid of that for
but
sure.
it's not. I'm not talking about affirmative action. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the opposite of that. I'm talking about, like, we have too much of one ethnicity, such as we have too many Asians, or we have too many you know uh, whites, or we have too many African Americans, or whatever. That is also kind of strange to me, because
It's very
you're treading
strange.
you're treading a fine line, because if you want affirmative action, you want diversity on your campus, but then you're also discriminating to
It's like
discriminate.
artificial diversity.
artificial
Just
diversity.
cherry
That was
picking.
another problem. I know a lot of kids that deserve to get in. I knew of a lot of kids that deserve to get into the school more so than others, but they just happen to be Asian, for example, and there are already too many Asians.
I was
I don't know.
joking with Monica that I don't mark myself as Asian on applications, even though technically the Middle East is in Asia, because there is higher competition within Asians than there is in white. Now, obviously, it would be incorrect to call myself Asian anyway, according to their own weird metric. I'm supposed to mark
You
white
have to
because I'm
put
Middle
white.
Eastern because
Yeah.
reasons. But I
Well,
was making that joke that it's just harder for Asians to. I don't know. Asians are playing life on hard mode for no reason in
for
America.
no
It
reason.
makes no
Yeah.
sense. It really makes no sense to me. What do you think, Monica? You're Asian. Comment on it.
Um,
Yeah.
I thought I worked hard.
Of course.
I thought I kind of deserved to go in. So, I mean, I don't know why you beating me up for being
We're
Asian.
not beating you up.
No, we're support the complete opposite. We're saying so many kids that I saw were Asian deserved to go to these their reach schools, but because the quota was already met,
Well, I mean,
not all of them could go.
I guess it's a little bit different since I go to Cal State Long Beach, so they definitely pride themselves on diversity. So I don't know if our campus has sort of that like fake diversity thing that you guys were talking about because I definitely see a lot of people of different ethnicities and different races
No,
and all of that.
Monica, I want to clarify that it was more like that. We're only going to accept 100 Asians, or we're only going to accept 100. That's what mostly we're talking about. It's stuff that's not really brought to light all the time.
I don't
So
think that's what my school does though, because I mean, at least they don't make it really obvious.
that would be scandalous if you make it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't think that's necessarily something that I've seen around my school because I feel like if you got in, you kind of got in. But I could be wrong.
This is an issue in UCs, in higher, in a lot of institutions that my friends go to. I don't know if it's an issue in Cal State. I'm sure it exists in some way or another, but when we're talking about the really selective schools, and Cal States are selective since so many people apply to them. We want a merit-based system. We don't want a, I don't know, race-based system. I don't even know what to call it.
I mean,
Dario, you're right. It's like a borderline racist system. I don't get it.
for Cal States, for Cal States, I don't think it's as much of a ethnicity thing as much as an income thing because I think income definitely influences whether or not you're going. Because I know that they try to make a point where they're saying, oh, we have a lot of people who are from low income families who go to Cal State. So I think that would be more of an apparent issue than
Sure,
race.
of course. But no, absolutely economic discrimination.
Yeah.
But not outwardly, right? It's kind of just like that's how it goes. If you're lower income, that's your best shot.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to probably steer the conversation, if I may, into this argument that I am starting to love the merits more and more because since I personally went to a public university as well, but in a different country. But I do want to say that I feel like public universities as an undergrad at least seem to be the better route. I am from a subjective point of view because I just see that, like Monica saying, I feel like people are more relaxed. They're more there to learn. They're more that, these private institutions, especially in the United States, but I saw it in France too. These private institutions have so much. They have their own. It's their microcosm. They have their own set of rules, and the way you're supposed to. It's just like
Arya has to go to like prayer every Wednesday. He goes to a
that's a good
religious school.
example.
Yeah.
It's just another freaking box to go. And you're like, I don't want. When I go to university, the whole point is to have a more. That's why you have 2 years of general ed classes, right? The whole point is to become cultivated and educated as a human. And, and also just to say that not all the great professors are at Harvard or Yale or Princeton. A lot of great professors are at Cal State, right? A lot of great in history, too. A lot of great professors were at bizarre schools that you'd never even heard of. Like in the 60s, great physicist Dirac, he was at Florida University.
Imagine
At that time,
voluntarily living in Florida.
yeah, because he had health problems. This is very interesting, and this happens to a lot more professors than you think. Either you have health problems, or you have some, or you get a shit ton of funding from the university, and that's where you migrate to. He had health problems, and he was supposed to spend it at a very warm climate. California was the first choice, but then Florida threw a shit ton of money at him, and gave him a lot more research opportunities. So he's like, I'm
Mhm.
gonna, the world class, famous Nobel Prize winning physicist at that time goes to bumfuck middle of nowhere, Florida, and made that school a fantastic. Like that was part of
Yeah.
their prestige. We
You
had to
know,
give back.
I have a cousin who's actually she's graduating this year and she's about to go into college, and she wanted to be a doctor. And she got accepted into Cal State Fullerton, Cal State Long Beach, I believe Chapman, and UCI. And a lot of the conversations that we were having was she was afraid of going into UCI, but part of the reason why she went was she felt, from the pressure of her parents and from, outside sources, was that she felt that if she was going to go into medical school, her best bet would be going to UCI because that would look good. And I understand where she's coming from, and I think the thing that she really had to ask herself was, are you going to UCI kind of like as a flex to say like, oh, like I went here, like, I'm good, I manage these classes, I go to like a really distinguished school. And I told her that, your career shouldn't be based on, flexing which school you went. It's what you got out of it. And I told her that going to Cal State Long Beach, I do have a lot of great professors, and some of these professors have taught at, I believe my differentials professor used to teach at Yale.
Right
So
there you go. It's so weird.
yeah. So I told her that, going to schools, if you're going just to flex, odds are you probably might not be happy. And you should just be mindful that there's plenty of ways to get into med school, regardless of the school of your choice. I think ultimately she did choose to go to UCI, but she,
Oh, she did?
she did have, I think she's waiting for NYU.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, I had to keep reminding her that you can't just go to like the school that sounds the fanciest. You have to go, based on your interests too, and you have to make sure that you fit in with the campus around you and make sure you're happy. But
Yeah.
for right now, I think she's going to UCI because she feels like she would do better and it would be more beneficial for her for other reasons. And I support her with that. But I think the biggest thing was not, trying not to listen to your Asian mom saying, oh, go to UC, it's better than CSU. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, I agree with Daria's point where, you have really great professors that can be found in like, in places where they're unexpected to be found. And I think
That's
it's
what
just
gets you in, right? That's what
Mhm.
gets you into a great grad school. Like we were saying, there's a recommendation. That professor, if your differentials professor, for example, taught at Yale, he has weight, and you get a letter from him. It doesn't matter what fuck school you're coming from. It matters that
Yeah.
this guy, that this individual with his opinion it has weight. If that person writes you a letter, I don't give a fuck if you came from wherever you are, apparently this person believes in you.
And I think it's for employers. I mean, I may be wrong, but I think it shows more when you're getting an A in, for example, a Cal State rather than getting like C's in UCs. It shows that I feel like it shows like, okay, you got into the school, but you weren't able to keep up with the workload. So, I mean, that might be my take, but I feel like an A is always better.
I do want to kind of go with Monica's, but I feel like even if you get those A, people get so disenchanted. I've seen it, like they go to the Ivy League, right, and then you talk to them and they're like, it's not that great. Like, or someone else, they're like, yeah, I hear that time and time again. It's
And these
like
people don't usually have personalities either because they only flex. And it's like,
you know
okay, well, what do you have
what?
to show for yourself?
It's the people with personalities that are like
Hmm.
it's the ones without personalities that were flexing. They love it, because they have that 4 year ego boost, right? But the ones with personalities, they're kind of there sitting there like, this kind of sucks. Like, I just want to get my bachelor's and get the fuck out of Harvard. I know someone like that. He was fantastic, and he's teaching at he's a high school teacher. He did Teach for America, and he loved it.
I
Hey.
was applying to that.
Yeah, he's but see, this was someone who was a very funny guy, fantastic guy, and he was very disenchanted with the whole private education. I don't think it was just necessarily Harvard. I think it was just the whole idea of this, broader private education, that like the kind of microcosm he was, you know,
And I think it's worth a shot for not going to the big flashy schools. Like I know that there's the Big Tens and there's the
Right.
Ivy Leagues, but I had a friend who was super, super smart, and like I couldn't believe how smart he was. And when we were in high school, he was a year older than me. He was trying to decide where to go, and I was saying, "Oh, you should go to like the big fancy schools." And he ended up going to a very small private school, which was smaller than our high school, and he did really well there. And right now I believe he's in Brown, and he's still one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. And it kind of goes to show that wherever you go for your undergrad doesn't necessarily define your path in life. Because I mean, if you can go to a private school who I've never heard of and end up at Brown, obviously your school choice doesn't influence so much as what you actually learn and gain from going to school.
And it is to be said that there is an advantage for people, right? I think we all have to admit that there's an advantage, a big advantage for people who got to go to the flashy schools when they apply for grad school. Then I also see like that a lot of people that applied for doctorates, they have a friend from U Chicago who and U Chicago is one of the Big Ten, right? And he studied economy there. So that might be incorrect, but that might be the best economy school in the country program. Sorry, the U Chicago's, right? A lot of big names came from that school. But he had a very difficult time getting accepted to grad school. They got a lot of applications refused, and it's because he didn't know the right didn't know the right professors. He didn't get the right recs or stuff like that.
So on that topic, don't mean to backtrack too much. The main difference that you were making between public and private universities, Dario, was that public universities to you seem more enriching, more indicative of what real life is like, whereas private universities seem like their own bubbles, their own, what did you call it, a macrocosm, and its own sort of environment. I want to point out that that works in America. If you go to a private university in America and you're going to live in America and your friends are American, like you might as well do that. If your world is small, your worldview is small, and let's say you have one goal in mind, oh, I want to go into business, I'm going to get an MBA from USC and only hang out with a bunch of people from USC. Like, how many people do you think exist like that in LA? Probably a lot of people got an MBA from USC and just hang out with a bunch of fellow business people that they met from USC, and they got a bunch of connections from USC, and basically their whole life and their whole foundation was built because they went to USC and they just know a bunch of people from there, right? That exists.
But talking about discrimination, just quick side note, my good friend went to USC. I cannot stand that school. I cannot stand USC. It's because of the whole, exactly because of that. Nothing to do with its academics, nothing to do with its programs, which are fantastic. But it's because of the kind of people it generally attracts, the kind of stigma. I have a stigma attached to USC.
Chat, let us know if you hate USC. Go on, Dario.
Yo, bro. Oh, I thought you said in the chat, or you said Chad?
Chat.
Oh, no, yeah. Too many Brads and Chads at USC, and I do think it goes to say that it does. Universities, some do attract because of that microcosm that they make in order to propel you into the right niche in American society. They have that kind of, they attract they're a magnet for a certain kind of shit. What do you think? No?
Yes, that's what I was getting at. I agree. It attracts shit. Like they just have a bunch of shitty people, and they just accumulate more shit, and they're amazing and they're amazing. Well, it's funny because to them they're the shit, and to us they're shit. So either way they're shit. Whether they're the shit or shit, we can debate. But they attract themselves. They propagate their bullshit, and they live their shitty existence. Basically,
did you get cut off by a Maserati or something? What's going on?
What are you talking about?
Did you get into did you recently get into contact with one of these people?
Oh,
Yeah,
I
you were
know
kind of like
a
going
lot
on
of
a
these.
tangent.
I know.
I was like, damn. I was like, is it personal?
No, I was just playing off of the shit jokes. No.
I love it.
Should have been like our word for the day.
Point is, right? Overall, big picture, we were talking about how, oh, okay, public school academic standpoint much more enriching in our opinions. Private schools maybe more of a bubble, but it depends on the institution. I just think that it really reinforces the point that whether or not a public or private institution is good is in your perception. If your worldview is that tiny, then you're going to say public schools are bullshit. I'm going to go to USC and make hella money. If you have a passion for academia, you're probably going to be geared towards a research school, whether it's private or public. So it's just more complicated than, and more in the eye of the beholder than anything else. That's what I think.
True.
That's what
Well,
I
I think
think
that's
about
what
that.
I think that's what a lot of people are struggling with because I know that I have a lot of friends. I had a friend I knew in high school. She, when we were graduating, she was going to University of Minnesota, which I believe is one of the Big Ten. And she was really excited. She thought like, oh, I'm gonna go to this big old campus. I'm in a Big Ten school. I worked really hard to get here. And she actually suffered depression when she went there because she realized she did not like it. She didn't fit in there. She missed California. And after about a year, she came back and she was like so much happier, even though she had to go to community college for some, unit transfer
You
reason.
see how you said
But
community college there? That's the stigma I'm talking about.
no, I'm saying she had to go because of like some sort of transfer issue thing. But even though she went to community college instead of going to a Big Ten school, which is, a great difference, she was a lot happier here. And I think that kind of goes on to what you're saying with you can't just go wherever it sounds great. It has to go, you have to go to where, it matches your interests. And I believe she is at Cal State Fullerton right now and, still going after her bachelor's. And she's been doing really well. I mean, I'm really happy to hear that she got out of it. But I mean, that kind of serves as an example where, you know, it sounds great to go to this big fancy school, but if it aligns to none of your interests, you're not going to be happy there.
Yep. I just want to make a meta point about high schools and sort of education reform. Our current education system kind of breeds a bunch of sheep. That's what we were talking about earlier. The fact is, most people don't have personalities when they leave high school. So, of course, they don't know what they want. And that's kind of a part of the problem. That's why I was saying college should become seamless. Like, you need to have a school for people without personalities. Like, if we're going to go full dystopian, just make it dystopian the whole way. Just let's not create illusions and disillusion our kids about college. Either we're talking about the utopian reform the whole thing, or if we're gonna put the band-aid solution, at least create an extension of high school and just slap the college name and give them a college degree at the end.
Well, I think the
Because
problem's deeper than that
yeah, it is, but
because it
I'm
kind of
just
has to
touching
do
the
with,
surface.
yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I think it kind of has to do with a lot of boomers who are teaching, the millennials this mindset. And I believe that our generation is a little bit more open minded, kind of like tired of all the crap. So, I mean, I think we are progressing towards, moving away from that. Maybe not towards a total dystopian thing, but I don't think it's totally like that anymore.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree. Right now, boomers are still alive, and all the systems they've set in place have gotten worse. They've not gotten better.
I would
So,
even, yeah,
huh?
I would even go so far as to saying that watch how many millennials. It would be shocking the number of millennials that are going to actually contribute to those systems that
100%.
positively contribute to those systems that boomers put into place.
Yeah,
But I
and
mean, as
it's
me,
like,
I
what do
don't
you
agree with
know?
that.
But that's you. But how many of your friends don't care about things like this? Like, we're both thinking of the same person here. Somebody who goes outside during Corona, right? That kind of person. Okay. Now that you're thinking about that kind of person, Monica, um, is someone like that caring about the meta analyses that we're performing right now? No, they're going
I
to
was talking
propagate.
more towards like the educators that are in my like. I mean, I guess I'm speaking from sort of a bubble, but I mean, the classes that I'm in, they're kind of negatively telling you, oh yeah, like this is not good. You shouldn't be, feeding students like, oh, think this, blah blah blah. You should
Well,
be
that's
able to have
hopeful.
them.
That's good.
So I mean,
That's good to hear.
I guess that's kind of the point of view that I'm coming from, because now, at least from my program and from my school, all the people in my classes are trained to think opposite of what we've been fed our entire lives.
Shout out to
That's
Baptiste for tuning in. Finally figured out how to get to my Twitch channel. Anyway, you guys can continue.
Monica's. I think that Monica, even though Monica just said she comes from a bubble, I think it's a very powerful bubble. I mean, it does half of the thing is education. So if it's
Yeah,
already happening, if Monica's seeing it happening in the education sector,
That's
then I
good.
think that's really strong. That's a really good, healthy
I mean,
sign.
it's like really hopeful, because I know that, at least hopefully other schools are doing this as well. But I mean, if a lot of the programs, I mean, we're breeding a new generation of teachers who are, at least hopefully think like me, where it's like, okay, you were told A, I grew up this way, and I'm trying to tell you, like, don't do that. It doesn't work. Try to think for yourself and blah, blah, blah. And I think, this new generation of teachers that are, hopefully going to be replacing all the boomers and millennials who are teaching, I think it's going to be more progressive towards, not a total dystopian thing that you were talking about, but I think there is a positive change,
We can only
so long
hope,
as you
right?
follow these.
we,
Yeah.
we can only hope that that's the case. By the way, again, I don't mean to cut this episode short by any means, but I think we have enough material for a part 3. What do you guys think?
Sure.
You want to do a part 3 on Monday?
No, I'm not saying when, but like already, I feel like we haven't talked about college itself that much.
I was
We
gonna
sort of
say.
talked about the transition from high school to college, and we're talking about the admission process, and we're talking about how we can reform education again. Of course, it's going to come up every time, but I think we can have a purely college dedicated episode next time. And I kind of like this series. I wanted to point that out real quick, but you guys, you can continue.
No, I think it's really good, because I wish I had something to listen to this, because I felt really alone, especially for first gen kids who are going to college. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna wing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 I think listening to this, actually, it could help some people, like our friend who is thinking of going to UCI. Listening, what's up, Babsy? Listening to something like this can help people get into college and
But
choose the
yeah,
right college for them. So
I think it's hard, because most of the time you listen to your parents and your teachers, and again, these parents and teachers have that original mindset where you just got to do whatever sounds like the biggest flex. And I mean, luckily she has this podcast and us as people to talk to her and help her really weed through her concerns and actually listen to her, so she doesn't end up screwed and unhappy and depressed.
Dude, that's the thing. They always make the argument. It's the real world. It's real world. And even in high school, I was like, fuck the real world. Fuck you and
exactly.
your fuck you and your shit. I don't. Fuck me. I don't give a fuck if I'm not this like making, uh, those millions of dollars. I've come to that peace. I've come to that peace of mind. But don't shoot down someone else for coming to.
It
Yeah.
costs $0 to mind your own business.
Yeah.
That's actually funny. I'm gonna put that as your quote, even though you took that from someone else for sure.
$3.99.
Thank you, Baptiste, for following. You the man. Let me put. That should be at the very top. Oopsie. There we go.
I do want to. Something just came to mind. Is that I don't know what you guys think about this, but I did always get the feeling going to the public high school, and then kind of seeing universities here and there, because I would go on different campuses. Some of my friends were older, so I would go to their campus when I was in college. Come back and kind of check out what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I started getting the feeling that these. I started getting the kind of conspiratorial feeling that these universities, a lot of it, because growing up here, you kind of get the feeling that people, every society primes, like we were saying in the first episode, every society primes its citizens through its education system.
Yep.
That's the right. But eerily so here, where you feel that everything you're doing is to get into the real world, their real world.
Yeah.
You're going to be educated this way and that way, and then this school, and then this feeding into all these mindsets. as the flex schools. Like so much of flexing is of that mindset, is being the optimal kind of the optimal kind of thinker that this society encourages, and that's unfortunate. The real world is not even the real world; it's their world. And
this is basically the basis for conspiracy theories and why people think
basis,
like
right?
this.
It's
Yeah,
it's it's also the basis for the Matrix and shit like that, right? Is that you
sure.
start to realize, yeah, it's really funny. It's funny how quickly the basis escalates to the craziness. But
Yeah,
the weird, strange part is that this basis has been consistent throughout, all time,
I
and
know.
we still haven't really come to terms with it, that there are certain things that make my life easier, certain schools that will make my life easier, certain methodology, certain routes, certain paths that make my life materialistically or even career wise, my goals easier to reach. But how many people are willing to face that question? How many? And millennials, I already think down the drain, but zoomers, I want to see how many zoomers face that question, because they kind of have this kind of fuck all neutral attitude towards things,
Well, I mean,
which I
that's I think that's just a totally new question, because I feel like half the Zoomers are like, oh yeah, like you have like this whole like enlightenment thought of school, and then there's the other half of Zoomers who are making TikToks and just want to be Instagram, TikTok famous and have no intention of going
Yeah,
into
they're
school.
definitely going to be
So I mean,
super sheep
very interesting
zoomers.
to me. That's the blowback of
so I
the. It's
think, yeah.
really shitty blowback, but at least
Yeah.
there is a blowback.
I mean, the way I've been thinking of it is that you kind of figured out the problem of how to deal with getting students to get away from the stigma. But now it's like, okay, well, now that we're getting away from this whole stigma that was originally implemented, now you have this thing of getting the Zoomers to be interested in school, which is really
Love
hard.
I love their total rejection. I gotta give it to them. I hope they stick with it, because
Yeah, you're a
millennials are
real
kind of
edge
had
lord, Daria.
to make it kind of degenerate. To go back to our first episode, the generation gap. I think that
Ooh.
it's interesting that millennials have this mindset of, I want to change the system from within. I'm going to become the congressman you always wanted. And then they become the same jackass that was there 20 years ago.
Not AOC.
Whereas Zoomers, I feel, already don't have that kind of attitude, right? They're like, you know what? I see these loser millennials going into the same fucking jobs they wanted to change, right? Not talking about you, Monica. Education is always an exception. Because I'm talking about jobs where you affect mass amount of people, and it's not a direct one-to-one relationship. So like education is not that, because you're in the classroom with your students talking directly to the people you affect. It's a whole different ball game. But so many jobs out there, like government and things like that, millennials, they feel like they go into it and they're like, where I have to make
And I think,
decisions
yeah,
that
Zoomers are just totally turned off to that. They're just kind of like, I'm going to do my own thing.
yeah, and you
Why
know
would
what?
I
Actually,
be a
I kind of dig them
businessman
for
when I
it.
could go
I like
viral on
their
TikTok?
dedication. But I want to see how far they take it. I want to see if they're gonna half-ass it and give it up halfway and cave in, because that's a very difficult question when this real life does hit, quote
Well, I
unquote.
think
When
that's
their
kind
real
of
life hits.
Well, that's kind of what I've been trying to battle. I mean, that's kind of what teachers are trying to battle right now, because I mean, it's unfortunate, but a lot of the time, a lot of these students think, "Oh, I'm going to be TikTok famous. I'm going to get a lot of followers. I'm just going to quit school and like do this full time, be a YouTuber, gamer, whatever it may be." Because the reality is that there's a totally new job market that has never existed before, and a lot of these kids are really ambitious. And I think it's okay to have ambition, but the problem is that a lot of these kids don't have safety nets.
Right.
And I
Right.
think it's kind of training them. It's okay to go after what you want, but it's important to make sure you have the safety net, because again, unfortunately, the reality is that as much as it sucks, you're going to kind of be like left on your ass if you don't have anything to show for, and you can't always depend on your parents or blah blah blah, because it's not always going to be that way. And I think that these kids don't have a plan B,
Well,
which kind of
I would hope that they wouldn't need a plan B. Not to say that, like, the TikTok and shit like that, which totally is totally the route they're going, right? I was kind of hoping that from that there would be a kind of, I mean, it's probably very hopeful, but I was hoping that there'd be a lot of Zoomers who would take that into a more intelligent degree, right? They'd be like, I don't want to be the same shit that the millennials and the boomers were getting into. So what if I do educate myself? What if I do become a free thinker? What if I don't fall into the same
that's
hive shit?
wishful thinking.
I think
That's what I'm saying.
that is
That's what I'm
ideal, but there is a lot of privilege that does come along with that, because I think that you would have to be in a good financial situation to be able to do that.
I disagree. Free thinking doesn't depend on your economic situation.
But I'm saying if you don't have a job and you have no one to...
Daria's not talking about free thinking as a career. He's talking about just not conforming.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Other careers. I guess I was kind of talking about it as a career because
it leads to that, but she was saying, oh, you can't be like, there was just a tiny glitch.
I think.
No, honestly, yeah. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you have, what I was trying to get at was if you have the mindset of free thinking, then a lot of doors will open up to you that have not been opened up to millennials and boomers because they're stuck in the same vicious cycle. Millennials are really struggling to get out of it. We don't want to be in it. We're aware of it. We're aware it makes us depressed. But we're having, this generation has a very difficult.
It's like an abusive relationship with it. You're addicted to it. But
perfect analogy, really. It's abusive relationship, and some of them are sadists. They enjoy it. A lot of millennials enjoy it. But Zoomers, on the other hand, I like this total rejection. But if only they totally... I guess what I'm trying to say is I hope they totally reject intelligently. That's what I want to...
Yeah, okay,
again, that's
what I was
such
kind of
wishful
going
thinking.
towards.
I really don't think the generation that's on TikTok and the generation that's like eating Tide Pods is the intelligent generation.
Yeah, that's kind of... I agree with... I mean, I totally get... I mean, now that I heard your point a little bit more and got a little bit more into it, I agree that, ideally that would be the best thing. But going along with Kia's what Kia said, I really don't think that this whole generation of makeup artists really think, oh, I'm going to use my free thinking to go into something more progressive.
Yeah,
So
Daria, I think your nightmare scenario is going to happen.
It's the nightmare scenario.
That's kind of what I'm battling right now. I mean, again, like what Daria was saying, kind of getting them to think freely, but do it smartly and not, screw yourself over later on in life.
The nightmare scenario, Daria, is rejection without intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, I mean, I literally had a student who was all Fs, and he just straight up said, I don't want to take these tests. I'm going to be famous. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to be famous.
Mom told me a lot of those stories too from her school. That sucks.
So that's kind of the battle. Like, you got this new generation of thinking a different way, but it's kind of like, crap, how am I going to get them to think a different way?
Again, they are, Monica, don't you think they're very young? So we just give them more credit. They're going to go through their own disillusionments. They're going to go through their own... There's this great quote about, like, every generation has to repeat the same mistakes, but, like, in a different way, in their own way. You have to repeat the same mistakes in their own way. I really like that. So I just hope that their way is a little more, at least, if not intelligent, I really hope that it's at least philosophically more rewarding, more nutritional for the soul than
I think I was paying more attention to, like, the financial aspect of it more than the philosophical thing.
I'd really want to say that to people out there is, like, never let... I mean, easier said than done, but financial... I think in this country, it's really easy to allow the financial as a reason to handicap you. When it's not always that. Don't listen to all the Americans out there. Life is not all about money. It's a lot better with it. I can tell you that. It's true. But
money doesn't bring happiness.
Intelligence all the time. I mean, it can help it a lot, but I don't think it brings it. And that thing, if you just bring something to you, then that's the important part.
Well, I wasn't necessarily meaning like rich. I meant like not getting broke. you know.
Oh, extreme case. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah,
that's
I
what I
agree.
was
I
kind of
agree,
talking
man.
about. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. If you go broke, you need to eat, you need to survive.
Yeah, I mean, like that's what I'm saying. Like if you're free thinking, but if you're, in debt, maybe you get a
I
job
mean,
part time.
yeah, so many. It's so unfortunate. It's such an insult to the human race that so many great thinkers have come out of great institutions and great
If
things, and
only there was a
we're broke.
solution. If only there was something like universal basic income that could exist. Oh, it does elsewhere? Oh, okay.
Scandalous, scandalous. For shame, you read,
I know.
read.
I'm a communist now, right?
Guys,
That's
your
for.
FBI agent's gonna get mad.
Yeah.
Listen, kid, I don't want no lazy people coming at me with their jobless
They're
asses.
taking
Go
our
to work.
money. Our taxpayer money's going to them. Oh
Seriously,
la
like
la.
how hard is it to go flip patties? You got to do what you got to do to survive.
You know how I got to where I am? I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. I got a lick of gumption and I went to town and would work.
People, Monica, how do you feel about this? Like, don't you feel like people, especially maybe in education too, people still have a very, very like the pioneer days mindset. Like,
You
buddy,
know,
I
I
shouldn't have to
think
be able to flip patties to survive. We're living in a fucking advanced post-industrial society. Don't tell me I have to get a shitty job,
Hmm.
if I'm smart, just because
you
I
know,
have to.
I would say I do have, colleagues, I guess, yeah, colleagues and former teachers who have that mindset. But again, they were the older generation. I have teachers who are younger. They were about 30, 35, and they admitted that they said, like honestly, I wanted to be like, for example, I think my old teacher wanted to be like some sort of engineer, and he did make a lot of money. And he's
Engineer.
like, yeah. And he said, yeah, I made a lot of money, but he's like, it sucked. I hated it. I didn't get any interaction. He's like, I went teaching. He's like, yeah, my income isn't as much, but I'm happier. And I think that the older generation is really stuck on, just kind of doing what it is to survive. And, my younger colleagues who are millennials, they have a different mindset. Yeah, they still have that, survive thing going on in them. And then you have, the teachers who are a couple of years older than me who finally just got their job and they're like, oh, yeah, I totally agree with this whole new mindset that you guys were talking about.
Mhm.
So it's just, I think that it really has to do with what the age you're talking to about, because there are people who think that way, but for the most part, it's the older generations. And then you just have the conservatives who just think that way because they want to think that way.
I don't want to broaden the scope of the conversation too much, but you brought an important word there, survival. Look, I'm not going to start talking about how there shouldn't be uh, how child starvation should not be a thing in the world. I'm not going to start to say why is there huge income disparity. Obviously, I know there are a lot of systems in place that are corruptible that have led to all of this. But yeah, the fact is, for some people, life is about survival. And yeah, we like you were saying, Daria, we live in a post-industrial society. Should life be about societal in 2000? Should life be about survival in 2020? I'd argue no. But it does help to explain a lot of the mindset that we're talking about. It does help to explain why herd mentality is a thing, why people end up doing jobs they hate. And Monica brings up a good point that a lot of people are living to survive, whereas I think others are living to enjoy life. And I think that's the difference.
Americans are still fucking explorers. They're still the manifest destiny, just in a different
Yeah.
way. It's really funny to me. I wanted to ask you guys this. Because you guys have been in you've lived in the United States up to now. Your whole experience has been living here. Me having lived somewhere else without comparing it to it, I did realize that the generation gap though here, the generation in France at least, I don't really there, of course there's generation gap, of course, but it's not a topic. People are not pointing fingers left and right. There's not really any here. Like in the 60s, we had don't trust anyone over 30, and it's definitely stronger now. But in France, it doesn't really freaking matter. Like there's cool old people. There's just as many cool old people as there are cool young people. You know, here though, it seems like it's so like intense. So I wanted to kind of ask you guys what why that is,
Well,
especially in regard.
one thing I thought of right off the bat is your social circle. If you're going to, uh, I don't know if this is this way in other countries, but you obviously lead a more isolationist life here. It's more about individualism. It's more about, I see my friends at work and we keep it professional. It's not like, oh, I go to bar with my work friends when, some of your work friends are 60, some of them are 18. It's not. I don't really see that as a widespread thing.
Oh,
And I
isolationism,
think
grouping
that
people.
individualism, isolationism, all contribute to this sort of pointing fingers at other people. It's like, well, it can't be me, right? So that's the boomer
Right.
mentality and the millennial mentality. It's like, can't be me. So if you're only hanging out with millennials when you're a millennial, or you're only hanging out with boomers when you're a boomer, who else do you have to point to? You're not going to point fingers at yourself. So then you have a huge generational gap. Also leads to racism, obviously. But we're seeing that less with millennials because you have programs that were somewhat successful. Like Monica said, okay, some of my classmates were Latinx, some of my classmates were white, some of my classmates were black, whatever it may be. And then we went to an international school. We had people from all kinds of places. So at least racism, it's more institutional here than sort of on an individual level. And I think the opposite is true in places like France, which is funny.
Michael, what do you think about the generation that
You
white's so
know,
intense?
I don't know if it's because I was fairly young, so I mean, 5 years old. I don't think I know what everybody is talking about, but I mean, I don't think I saw it or heard any of these, feelings growing up. I didn't think that. I think it wasn't until I hit about high school that I felt that I heard that there was kind of like a battle going on between like millennials
Yeah,
and Zoomers and blah blah
that's
blah.
when you yeah, that's when you
Yeah,
flower into. So high schools are good. So since then,
yeah. So I wasn't okay. Well, I mean, growing up, I didn't hear it. So for me, I wasn't sure if it just started. Like like it's kind of like, oh, has it always been this way, or is this new? Um. So I mean, you guys are a little bit older, so you might be able to have more insight. But
not really, Monica. Come on, not
I
really.
mean, you said you were 26, so that's like 5 years, four
Oh,
or
it is.
5 years
Age
older.
doesn't really matter at this point once you're
No, but
above
I'm
like
saying
21.
no, but I'm saying like you got to high school before I did, so you know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like,
No, I got you. Yeah, no, she
yeah.
got a point. She got a point.
So
Like
you
we've
were
had more time
exposed.
to mire into the,
Yeah,
more time to observe,
yeah.
essentially.
That's yeah. So I mean, you guys got a couple more years. So for me, when I got into high school, I wasn't sure if this is how everything was always was, or again, is it just happening? Is this a new thing? But I do feel like social media has progressed the feelings and the negative feelings towards the older generations and
Hmm.
older generation feeling differently about the younger generation because you
I don't
have this
think
okay
boomers
boomer.
followed James Charles, for example.
No, but like
Boomers
you have
themselves.
grandchildren. You have grandchildren. They can sort of observe what their grandchildren are doing because you hear a lot of people saying like, "Oh yeah, when I was a kid, I was getting a
Sure.
job, I was getting married, I was having kids, a family," and then like you see
When
their
I was a
grandkid
kid,
and
I
they're
was
like,
having kids.
"Yeah." So I mean, I think it just progressed at a really rapid rate, and and I think that when I was in middle school, again, I didn't hear any of this whole Zoomer boomer thing, and then now you have my elementary kids and my middle school kids who are like, oh yeah, like boomers, and it's like what? I wasn't paying attention to these things as a kid, so
Yeah, we didn't have
it
the
just
same
spreads like
label.
wildfire.
We didn't have the same. I totally agree with you that the social media totally did. You're right. It did totally make it more intense,
So
and
yeah,
gave it labels
Yeah.
that even now it has a slogan and everything. But I felt it growing up, but I didn't really just like put it into words. I felt that it was like every kid feels it. I can't talk to like there's a reason why you can't talk to your parents, but you can talk to your friends. That's
I
that's
mean, I
just
think
always
that's like a normal thing about growing up, though.
so that's a generation gap right there. Because imagine if you could, as a kid, trust someone that's older than you and understand and trust that they understand what you're going through. but they don't and they can't. And so that's a generation gap right there.
Well, are you talking about parents or are you talking about just older people in general?
Older people in general now, but
Oh, I mean,
especially
I talk to my teachers all the time, though.
but it's very selective, right? It's like especially in the
Yeah.
States, I gotta tell you, I really don't think like in the States, like at a I'm French school, it was very funny. We had teachers from all over the world. I feel like I could trust them more. when I went to my American school, I was like, there's probably 2 teachers here I'd sit down and talk to.
Really?
And that's a personal thing, and everybody has like their own personal choice. Some kid might say, I could talk to all of them, but it's just to show that like the intensity of this generation gap. It's like I think it's really the U.S. has really shot itself in the foot with how it's been building its system, especially the boomers. In the 60s, it was the boomers themselves that were saying don't trust anyone over 30.
Yeah, they
The
were all
boomers
hippies.
themselves. And whether they were even yuppies, I think had that mindset too, but everybody kind of had this like, youth, young is fun. And then like, look what the monsters they turned into, the monstrosity that boomers are. And millennials are going down that route.
It's funny. There are constant tweets that are like, first of all, I don't think millennials are going down that route, but there are tweets that say boomers grew up in a time where healthcare costs were very low, education was very affordable, the U.S. was incredibly well off. Millennials are kind of going through the opposite of that. We're going through 2 once-in-a-lifetime economic collapses, and education costs are exponentially growing. Housing is exponentially growing in expense. Healthcare costs are growing as well. So definitely, I don't see a similar trajectory for millennials. And you're right, an intrinsic feeling for millennials to change the system around them, because all we've ever known is trash. All we've ever known is, insurance companies control your will to live. Education costs will cripple you for years after you're done with college. Getting this degree that's equivalent to a high school diploma, but that costs like 500 times more. And, the list goes on and on. I can't afford to live, like stuff like that. So I don't agree that millennials will become the beast that boomers became. I think boomers became the beasts that they are because everything was taken for granted. Because, they could just do what I did. I bought a house at age 14 after I worked at McDonald's for 2 weeks, like something like that. That's not possible and not in the scope of a millennial.
Can I interject for a second? Kind of, well, just like doesn't have to be talked about right now. Maybe it could be a different topic for a different day, but do you think that this coronavirus going on could have the potential to turn these millennials into, boomers where they're like, oh, I get why my parents said this and did this and blah, blah, blah.
You know what? I think we should have an entire separate episode on the impacts, the social impacts of, actually, you know what? Just the impacts of quarantine and COVID-19 on us. I think that could be its entire episode. So yeah, that's a great question, and I think
from school right now.
Yeah,
Monica, you just blew up.
It's a great question, but if we start to answer that now, we're literally gonna have a whole other episode.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to kind of like.
Baptiste, you should come on the next one. Baptiste, you should come on that one for sure. Anyway, so you're right. We kind of are getting out of scope, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're sort
let's
of
wrap this up, maybe.
We're sort of talking about everything. Yeah, let's try to bring it all back together. Looking at my list of notes, we were supposed to talk about high school AP versus IB versus FE, which we did. College admissions, which we did. Private versus public universities, we absolutely did not, and we want to leave that for a 3rd episode of the public versus private school series. And now we have this idea to have the impacts of coronavirus be an episode. That's good stuff. So to wrap up, we noted the differences between IB and AP, not so much FB. None of us did that, so it's not really relevant. So that IB is more of a marathon. It's Daria said a little more difficult. I would agree. It's a little more difficult. It covers more material, has a test at the end. But AP is more like a sprint. You have these tests at the end of the year. They determine whether you're going to get college credits. In the case of Monica, even though she had a perfect scores in her class and she got a 90th percentile on the college test, the AP score was enough to have her repeat calculus. So there's a lot of these small things that differ IB versus AP. One is more, let's say, of a world and holistic approach, and AP is more like not that. I said that poorly, but you get the idea. And then in terms of college admissions, I was arguing that we should try to make it more accessible, that college, since it's more similar to high school than anything, college degree, that is, that it should be not crippling in terms of money, and it should be much more accessible in terms of getting in. And I argued that while standardized testing has a place, that there shouldn't be this insurmountable pressure that 12th graders feel and 11th graders and really high schoolers feel to get into a college of their choice. And to give any final thoughts, here are Monica and Daria.
Monica, I just want to say, could you write that question down and throw it at us as the opening for the next podcast?
Yeah. I'm sorry, you said, is coronavirus going to turn millennials into boomers? Boomer 2.0.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. That's a great way to start. I just wanted, because the way you asked that question was great. So I wanted to.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
All right.
But, I don't have any final thoughts. So I don't know, Monica, if you.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for being on. Thanks, Baptiste, for joining us in the chat. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. We're going to wrap things up for today. I think, how about we do the Corona one Wednesday, same time, next Wednesday, same time.
Okay, give a little break in between.
Sorry?
For the part before part 3, switch to a different.
Yeah,
topic,
exactly.
right?
Exactly. We give it a little break. Yeah. But does that time work for you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Does that work for you? Make it 4 people?
Oh, Baptiste, right. So Baptiste, we're thinking of doing it Wednesday, so next Wednesday around 10:30. You can hit me up. Yeah, David's probably down. Hit me up in the DMs later. I'll message you about it, but we'll figure it out. Anyway, thank you for watching and have a great day.